This is Channel 4, New Orleans.
Dennis Wolter. Ann Simon with sports. And Al Duckworth with the weather. From Channel 4 Television, this is Eyewitness News.
Good evening. Washington tonight is waiting for the sound of President Reagan's veto stamp falling on a $428 billion budget passed by Congress today. The president's veto would mean that the federal government, which technically went broke at midnight Friday, will begin shutting down non-essential programs tomorrow and laying off hundreds of thousands of federal workers. We'll have a late report on that situation in Washington later in this newscast. Locally tonight, there weren't many signs that the federal government is preparing for a massive shutdown here. The General Services Administration, with about 80 employees in the New Orleans area, says it probably won't be laying off anyone. On Perdido Street, the Veterans Administration Hospital is one of those essential services like the Coast Guard that is not affected. And the hospital was operating as usual tonight. But in the Justice Department, U.S. Attorney John Volt says his office will make some adjustments in the civil division.
It'll mean that some persons will have to be furloughed without pay, unfortunately. But that's the law. It would be a criminal violation for us to, or for anybody, to proceed with government functions that are non-essential, as defined by the law, without appropriations being there.
Volt stressed that law enforcement will not be affected, and as a result, so the U.S. Attorney's Criminal Division would probably stay at full strength. Those budget cuts in welfare that have been discussed for months will soon hit home for several thousand Louisiana residents. Newsman Bill Capo reports that effective tomorrow, a large portion of welfare recipients here will be dropped from state rolls and will not find a check in the mail next pay period.
State officials say as many as 1,500 families in Orleans, Jefferson, St. Bernard, and Plaquemines parishes, and up to 5,000 families statewide, are to lose the money they receive under the Aid to Families with Dependent Children program. Under new federal regulations, computers selected 9,000 Louisiana families who were required to start filling out monthly income reporting forms like this. Those who didn't return the forms will lose their benefits, as will some who did, because they don't meet other requirements. But the impact of the federal government's cuts comes at the worst time of the year, the Christmas season. The next checks were scheduled to arrive December 15th. That's 10 days before Christmas. And of course, those people who are being affected by the cuts won't be receiving those checks. Welfare officials say December will probably be a long and emotional month. For the average family, the monthly checks run about $160. Welfare officials know that for many, the financial loss will be serious.
For many people, it's certainly going to mean that their rent's not going to get paid, or food may not be on the table, or whatever they're using their money for. But of course, there will be those few, I'm sure, who are also going to be totally penniless. That's going to happen.
Officials say that by October 1982, they expect to have people who receive benefits from all welfare programs except food stamps involved in the monthly reporting program. And they say that if current trends continue, that could mean that thousands of people who now receive welfare benefits could be cut off by the end of next year. I'm Bill Capo, Channel 4 Eyewitness News.
The mystery deepens in the case of money found in the safe of National Security Advisor Richard Allen. New evidence indicates Allen may have received more than $1,000 from Japanese journalists who interviewed Nancy Reagan last January. Richard Shackney reports.
Spending a Sunday at home, Richard Allen was saying nothing at all about the latest question. If the payment from the Japanese magazine was $1,000, why was the number 10,000 written on the envelope containing the cash? Both Allen and the executive for the Japanese magazine say the honorarium, supposedly to go to charity, was only $1,000. But according to published reports, the figure 10,000 was written on the envelope, although it's not known in what language. However, CBS News has been told that there was some Japanese writing on the envelope. And in Japanese, the words for 1,000 and for 10,000 are written very differently. One character cannot be mistaken for the other. Presidential counselor Edwin Meese says the White House had to refer the matter to the Justice Department, even though the consequences were painful.
Oh, I think whenever you have these things come up, they do some damage. We hope it won't be a great deal of damage. We hope that when the final report comes out, that will clarify the matter, and I can assure you that whatever that report comes out with, it will either totally clarify and absolve the individuals involved, or if should be otherwise, then appropriate action will be taken.
Officially, neither Meese nor anyone else in the administration would comment on the progress of the investigation. But it's an embarrassment that will not disappear very quickly. Best estimates are that the Allen investigation will last another 2 weeks, perhaps more. Robert Shackney, CBS News, the White House.
Soviet President Leonid Brezhnev tonight is on his first trip to the West since the 1979 Russian invasion of Afghanistan. Brezhnev arrived in Bonn, West Germany today for talks on nuclear weapons in Europe. And Tom Fenton reports that Brezhnev was met by several groups of protesters.
There were at least half a dozen different demonstrations in Bonn today prior to Brezhnev's arrival. There were Afghan students protesting the Soviet invasion of their country, and young Christian Democrats protesting the deployment of Soviet SS-20 missiles aimed at Western Europe. They attracted relatively small crowds compared to the hundreds of thousands who have turned out for recent demonstrations in West European cities to denounce the NATO decision to deploy new American missiles. Brezhnev's visit comes at a crucial time in East-West relations. In view of his age and uncertain health, it may also be one of his last trips to the West. The fact that he is making the trip indicates the importance the Soviet Union attaches to salvaging what is left of détente with the West. Even getting out of an airplane after a trip of less than 3 hours is a major effort for the Soviet leader. He was steadied by his military aide, a Soviet general, as he descended the steps at Cologne-Bonn Airport. As usual, Brezhnev appeared to be gasping for breath or breathing through his mouth. West German Chancellor Helmut Schmidt joined Brezhnev for the 30-minute ride to Gimnik Castle, using the opportunity to begin his talks with the Soviet leader. Schmidt is the only important Western leader with whom Brezhnev still has a close relationship. Both have a vital interest in improving East-West relations, Schmidt because of Germany's exposed position between East and West, Brezhnev because of Russia's need for Western technology. Schmidt will urge Brezhnev to reach agreement with the United States in the negotiations on limiting medium-range nuclear missiles that begin in Geneva 8 days from now. There's speculation that Brezhnev, who was upstaged by President Reagan's arms limitation proposals 4 days ago, may use this visit to announce new concessions prior to the Geneva negotiations. Tom Fenton, CBS News, Bonn.
It is estimated that the world expenditure for military weapons is equal to the combined annual income of the poorest half of the Earth's population. That estimate by private disarmament expert Ruth Savard pegs arms sales at $500 billion a year. As we told you earlier, all federal spending will stop and many federal workers will be laid off tomorrow because Congress has failed to come up with a budget that meets President Reagan's approval. We now have a late report on that situation from Jed Duval in Washington.
The president tonight, in effect, looked the Congress in the eye and said, "Raise you one." Mr. Reagan sent press spokesman Larry Speakes out to tell reporters that the cabinet is being called into session at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. You might call it an emergency session, said Speakes. Cabinet officers will be directed to begin the orderly shutdown of government. 400,000 non-essential federal employees will be, in effect, laid off. Speakes said they will be told to come to work, cancel meetings, lock their safes, cut out the lights. Speakes noted that 150 of those affected will be White House officials and workers at various levels, about a third of the people who work here. This will happen, said the press spokesman, if by the time the cabinet assembles, the Congress has not presented the president with a continuing resolution which would fund the government for a brief period. The president is taking these steps, Speakes added, with extreme reluctance, saying the public will be affected somewhat Monday and more acutely on Tuesday, and he guessed out loud that the main effect will be those telephoning federal agencies will have difficulty getting an answer. The threat to go ahead with the government shutdown is the next move by the White House in the struggle with Congress over the budget, a test of wills with House Democrats and especially their leader, House Speaker Thomas Tip O'Neill. It shows that the president means business on budget cutting, said one White House official tonight, adding that when this news gets out in the morning, the phones will begin to ring on Capitol Hill, and we hope they'll get the message. Jed Duval, CBS News, the White House.
Next, Republican governors talk about our guilt complex and the promise of early warnings in the industrial corridor.
Sure, I wear designer clothes from Rubenstein Brothers, Polo, Xenia, Calvin Klein, but not to show off the labels. I wear them to show off the merchandise. Me.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, shine your light upon my bar. Fill it full of baskets fine, ever rich with Martin wine. Let the bottles come together from countries far away to help me with my celebration this Christmas holiday. And as an extra stocking stuffer, some navel oranges from Port Sulphur.
Help a friend's Christmas wish come true. It's so easy at Martin Wine Cellar, 3827 Barone Street, where wise souls shop for Christmas.
Her jewelry has long since won international acclaim. Even so, Mignon Faget has always resisted the temptation to expand beyond her famous shop on Dublin Street, until now. Because now, the extraordinary jewelry of Mignon Faget is also available for Christmas giving and beyond at the new Mignon Faget boutique in Gardshows Lakeside. It is a very special Christmas for Mignon Faget and Gardshows.
Time. The truest test of any product is how it performs over time. Now, this. Magnavox Star System Color Television, designed for the highest reliability in Magnavox history. Design concepts, technology, advanced manufacturing systems for a picture as reliable as it is bright and clear. Magnavox.
Shop DH Homes for a wide selection of Magnavox home entertainment products.
23 Republican governors meeting here today heard members of their group criticize former President Carter for using guilt as a smokescreen for ineffective energy policies.
Even though the government itself has never been...
The Republican governors were holding a session on national policy issues. When it came to energy, Governor Thompson of Illinois chided President Carter's handling of the problem, charging the Carter people clouded the real answers by preaching a sermon of guilt.
It was the motorist's fault for wanting gasoline, the homeowner's fault for preferring warmth over cold, the farmer's fault for insisting on high yields, and the worker's fault for wanting to live in the suburbs.
Thompson said the politics of guilt worked. People began to feel shame over their mobility, their comfort, and their living standards. He said people were so preoccupied feeling guilty, they didn't see the Carter administration's failure, a failure to let the free market work.
And the steady, resolute construction of more complex regulatory systems was hidden. And consumers failed to see the resulting costs, both in dollars and reduced productivity.
Louisiana's Governor Treen continued the thought.
We ought to rely upon the free market system. We should move there as quickly as we can.
Governor Thompson said the energy dilemma must be resolved, because until it is, the nation can't heal its economic ills. Thompson also said a reasonable balance must be struck between energy needs and